Alright, so we're going to create our first bot and we're going to go over the process designer. So on the left here, click new process. You can name it whatever you want. I'm going to call it first process, and I'm going to click the process designer. Alright, so on the left here we have something called actions. Actions perform certain things on the computer. So under system we have a bunch of different things here, such as run application. We can drag that in and select an application we want to run. And close that. We can run a dose command, VB script. We can terminate a process, log off a user, shut down the computer. We can show the desktop. So if I drag that in and I press the run or start button up here, that shows the desktop on the virtual machine. I'm going to go ahead and delete that. We can ping a website. We can empty the recycling bin. So I'll go ahead and run that. Now my recycling bin's been emptied. We have conditionals here, so we check if things are happening. So we can say, we can read a file and we can say if that file contains the word cat, then we can do something else. So we can say if file equals, or we can say contains cat. Right now we don't have a file being loaded, so it's throwing an error, but this is just an example. We can say if the file contains cat, then we do something else. We can say if a process is running, we can stop the bot if a process is running. If service, if window contains loops. Loops are important. If we want to say we want to run our bot 10 times, we can start from 1 and end on 10, and we can do 10 loops. Under the waits, we can add how long to wait between each action. So if we want to wait 10 seconds before doing something else, we can add that there. We can wait for a hotkey, so Control, Shift, Alt and A are options we can use. So if I run this, the bot's currently waiting for me to press Control, Shift, Alt, A, so I'll press that. There we go. We can wait for a process. So if we want to wait for our bot to start, we can. We can wait for a window to appear by title and class, window control or window instance. So to add a window control, actually I'll cover that in a future episode. We can wait for the mouse to change, so that means the cursor becomes something different. So here we have flow control. What I like to do is add a label at the top of all my bots, and I'll call that label top. And then when I finish running the bot, I'll go back to the top, so it's like a loop, but it's less binding. Here we can run a function. Currently we don't have any functions added. We'll add some functions in a minute. We can exit function. We can stop the entire process from running, and if we want to stop it with an error, we can add an error message. We have the begin exception block and end exception block. I'm not going to worry about that since they're pretty advanced. So before we go on, I just want to add a function. On the right here we have the functions manager. With a little plus sign you can press the new function. I'm going to call this function new. So we can see up here now we have two tabs. We have one function called new, which we just created, and we have the main function. Now we have these errors being thrown here on the run function since we didn't add any function earlier. But now if we click the drop down box, if it wants to let me, we can add the new function that we just created, and we can cut this exit function and paste it into this function here. So now when I run this, it'll run the new function. New function exits the function and then it stops the robot. On the functions manager you can delete a function, you can rename it, you can highlight the currently active function, and you can also search the function. With the mouse and keyboard we can block input and unblock input at certain points, so if we want to move the mouse without being interrupted or type something without being interrupted, you can block the input and then unblock it. We can get the current mouse position relative to the screen and store it into variables. I'll go over variables shortly. We can move mouse to the image, so we can select an image using the capture image up here. And let's say I want to select this image there, I'll call that crack folder. And I want to search the entire screen, and I want to move the mouse to it with a animation, fast speed. So I'm going to move this over there real quick. I'm going to move this folder over here. Now I'm going to right click on the move mouse to image and start from here. And as you can see, the mouse moved to the crack folder. We can wait for image to appear. Send a left click after we move the mouse. And over here we have the exceptions tab. The exceptions tab is for handling errors. So if an exception happens, we want to retry the action multiple times every 3 seconds or so. We can select whether or not we want that to happen for all exceptions or a specific exception. So if an image isn't found on the screen, we can continue and go to the next action. Or you could run a different function. Say we could run the function new. We could run an entirely separate bot if we wanted to. Or we could just set a variable and set a value into that variable. So we could create a variable called failed, and we could put the value 1. And we could check later if that variable contains that value and do something based on that value. If we cannot move the mouse, we could set up a different action and whatnot for the exception. But typically you want to set up the same thing for all exceptions. So you could go continue to next action. Alright, we have move mouse to text on screen, OCR. Currently we don't have an OCR engine, but OCR means optical character recognition. So that means reading characters on the screen and converting it to text. We can send a mouse click, and you can select left click, right click, double click. You get the idea. We can also move the mouse before we send the click. So here we have the X and Y variables. Depending on where the mouse position is on the screen here, you can see that it's updating dynamically. If we want to grab the current mouse position, you can press Ctrl and Shift, like that, and that'll grab it, store it into the X and Y. Close that old function. Here we have send keys, so this will type keys into the game. Unfortunately with Winautomation it doesn't have the ability to actually press keys, so sending the key left and right for arrow keys won't work. That'll actually send it to the text box, which we don't want. You can press and release a key, so if we want to do shift dropping, we can turn on shift and you can press the following key, and then after we finish dropping all the items in our inventory, you can release the key, like that. So we'd press shift and then release shift. We have message boxes, so if we want, we can set up message boxes like this and run them after certain things happen. So we have a message box that says hi and hello. You can display a notification. You can display an input box, so this is good for grabbing information off the user if you want to share your bot, or if you want to enter how many times you want to do a certain thing. So when I run this, we'll get a box where we can enter data. So please enter how many times you want to do X. 10. Now obviously 10 doesn't mean anything, but if we look over here in the variables, the user input, which is the variable from this box, says 10, which is the number I entered. And then the button that we pressed was OK. So if we go back into this real quick, we can see here that we store the user input into the variable user input, and the button we pressed into button pressed. Now we know when we run this, the buttons we have are OK and cancel. So if I press this now, it says cancel and we didn't enter anything. We have a select date dialog. So I'm just going to quickly enter some spam crap, and here we can select the date. So we could say on this date we want to run the bot. Select file or select from list dialog. And we have the custom dialog. So here you can add certain inputs and different things to your custom field, or your custom dialog I should say, and to the title. height, I typically do 500 height, 450 width, keep on top, and I'm going to quickly run this custom dialog. So this is our custom dialog box there. We have some files, file actions, so we can get files in a folder, copy files, move files, delete files, rename, read text from a file, which is very handy. We can write text to a file, and we can get a temporary file. So this is good for storing data without wanting to fill up the computer with a bunch of files and whatnot. Here we have some folder actions. We can get subfolders in a folder. We can also create a special folder. So a special folder means a directory that's going to be the same regardless of the computer it's run on. So for example, everyone has a desktop directory, so we can use the special folder desktop directory and it'll grab the path relative to the current logged in user. So in my case, it's C users administrator desktop, but if your name was Adam, it would be C users Adam desktop, and it stores it into the variable special folder. We can create a folder in a certain location if we want to, and we can name it whatever we want. We can delete a folder, empty a folder, copy, move, rename, and get that special folder, which we already went over. Compression, you can compress and uncompress files using zipped. Clipboard, that means copying things and pasting things. So we can set text on the clipboard. So if I say hi, now run this. Now when I paste, you can see down here it says hi. You can clear the clipboard like that. So now when I paste, it shouldn't say anything. You can use UI and Windows, so we can say use desktop, select tab in a window, click an element in a window, you can drag and drop elements in a window, and so on and so forth. You can get the window, so if we want to get a specific window like calculator, we go select window, and we move the mouse over it, and it pops up with this orange box around it. Then press Control and left shift and then click it. So it says it found that window based on a few attributes. The class is calc frame and a few other things. It's visible, process is calc. So I'm going to select that and press add. I'm going to add it as a new control, and the new control name is window calculator. If we check the advanced, we can see that the window description is window calculator, and we also have the UI selector for the window. So this is the order I found it in: desktop, window name, calculator, process calculator, desktop window, process equals calc. And then we have the exception handler. So if I run this, it should bring the calculator window to the front. Yep. We can focus a window, so if we want to focus a window and bring it to the front, we can do that. Let's say I want to focus this WinRAR folder. You can click and drag this target to choose a window, which is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to drag it over to the WinRAR folder here, and you can see it's highlighting it. If I release that, it says window title, and it found the Winautomation title, or the window title I should say, and the class is WinRAR window. So if I wanted to find the WinRAR window every single time and the window title changes, you can replace this text here with a wildcard, and if I run this, it still found it regardless of the title. So that's how you focus the window. You can set the window state by title and class. I'm going to quickly run a different window. I'm going to run calculator again. So I'll select that window, and you can set it to maximized, minimized, or restored. So I'm going to make it maximize the calculator. So now if we check the calculator, it's maximized. We can also hide a window if we want to. Title and class. And I'm going to set that window to hidden. So if I run that, now it looks like the calculator disappeared, but if we check in the task manager, we can see that calc is still running. So I'm going to go ahead and end that. We can move a window, we can resize the window, and we can also close the window. We have web automation, which I'm not going to be going over since we don't really need that. FTP, it's the same thing, we don't need to go over file transferring. Emailing, don't need that. CMD session, you can write to a CMD, open the CMD session. We have cognitive, which is Google image recognition and vision. So if we have images and we want to check the details in that image, you can do so, but you need to have a API key through Google. You can do the same thing with IBM and Microsoft, they have their own vision and whatnot. You can do database managing, but we don't need anything through that. Excel, maybe if you want to export some information about your bots, you can do that. Outlook, we don't need that. Terminal, you can open up a terminal session, so that's pretty much the same thing as CMD really. Or it would be more like PuTTY, if you have any experience with PuTTY. OCR, which is the optical character recognition, so I'm just going to go over this briefly. We can create a Tesseract OCR engine by dragging that in there, and it'll scale things depending on what you enter here. So if you have trouble recognizing certain things on the screen, you can upscale and it might improve the OCR accuracy. You can extract text using OCR. So you can grab it off the screen like this. So I'm going to create the Tesseract engine and I'm going to extract the text. So it's currently extracting. So here's what it extracted. It got create a Tesseract OCR engine and assign it to OCR engine. That's just a general example of using OCR. You can also extract text from images on the disk. So if you select a picture and you want to extract images from that or text from that, you can do so. Capture fast, don't worry about any of that. CyberArk, you don't need to worry about that either. You can encrypt and decrypt text, which is a good way to protect your bots. You can start and stop a service or pause and resume. There's some Winautomations here, actions here. So we have services here. You can start, stop, pause, and resume the service. We have Winautomation actions here. You can start a different bot if you want to by selecting a different bot, and you can wait for that bot to complete. You can get command line arguments, get process path. You can log a message, and you can also get the last exception. Alright, so we have text actions here. We're able to get the length of text. So I'm going to add that. I'm going to press OK, and it's going to throw an error, but that's alright. We want to generate a random string. So I'm going to drag in a create random text, and I'm going to store that variable into random text. We're going to generate a random string from 6 characters to 10. And I want to get the length of that random string, so I'm going to add the variable in the text measure, and random text is the random string, and it's stored into text length. So when I run this, it generates random text, which is found here in the random text variable, and the length of that string was 7 characters, which is found in text length. We can pad text, trim text, which removes white spaces from the end and the beginning. You can change text case if you want to change it to lowercase, uppercase, sentencing. You can convert text to number, convert number to text, convert text to datetime, replace text. Has some XML actions which we won't really be using. So here we have the variable actions. Everything in Winautomation uses variables. So first we have our set variable. Variables are essentially names that store data. So let's say I want to call this variable cat, and I want to set the value to 1. I can say if cat equals 1, we can display a message saying yay, cat. So if I run that, we set the variable cat as 1, and we can check that variable over here. And we said if cat equals 1, then this opens up. So I'll close that. We can increase the variable. So I'm going to put the variable name cat here, and we'll increase it by 1. So now when I run this, cat won't open up because the variable was 2 since we increased it. But if I decrease it, decrease by 1, it should open back up. Okay, so we have truncate number, which is very useful for rounding up to the nearest 10, or even number I should say. Can get items count, so we can get the number of items in a variable, and generate a random number, so we'll be using this a lot. So if we want to generate a random number between 1 and 50, we can do that. So I'm going to remove this stuff here, and I'm going to run this. So funnily enough, we actually generated the highest number possible, which was 50. We run that again, we get 45. Run it again, we get 33, you get the idea. We can create a list, so if we read from a text file and the text file has a bunch of different items in it, we can add those items to a list, like so. We could add an item 1 into list, and it says that list doesn't exist, but that's fine, we'll create that list, and we'll call that list. Now, an example of this, I have the title here, title, dialog message, and the list to choose from. I'm going to add our list, so I'll go ahead and do that. Here we have our list items 1 and 2. I'm going to go back. We have PDF actions, which we won't be using, and synchronize actions, we're not going to be really using them either. So that pretty much covers all the actions. I'm just going to go over a few things in the actual process designer real quick. Up here we have the region, which is great for creating certain regions within robots and keeping it tidy. So if we have a banking region, we can create a region called banking, and everything within this region will be minimizable. So I'm just going to press OK, and I'm going to copy and paste that like 10 times. So we have this giant cluttered mess here, but if we want to, we can minimize that region and everything's tidied up. So I'm going to delete that. We have this comment button up here, so if we want to add documentation to our bot, we can. Just like that, you can select the color. So that's good for documenting your robots. We have the macro recorder. So we have smart recording enabled currently, or we can change it to based on coordinates. I'm going to start clicking over here. I'm going to click finish. So now when I run this, it was sending clicks even though the mouse didn't move. We have the web recorder, which we're not going to be using. Up here we have the debug settings. You can remove all breakpoints. You can start, execute the next action, pause and stop. In the tools we have browser extensions, so these are for automating the browsers, which we're not going to be doing. At the variable manager, so all of your variables will be stored here. You can also add a new variable. So I'm going to add this variable called cat again. Initial value is 1 and the description is cat. And you can set whether or not this variable is persistent, so that means each time you launch it up, that variable will automatically be set. Close. Also have the process designer options, so you can change the size of icons. The background color of base regions, you can change that. In the debugger, you can remove the 100 millisecond delay between actions to speed up the running process within the designer. You can change the default layout. Over here you can rename a variable, search, you can go to line. In the file you can save as, close function, and close the process designer. So that pretty much covers everything to do with the process designer. If anyone has any questions, just leave a comment below and let me know.